Hello and welcome to the Female Founder Friday podcast with me, Lindsay White. I'm passionate about helping female entrepreneurs be great leaders, build high-performing teams, and create inspiring workplace cultures through innovative talent programs and practices. Because when people feel like they belong at work, they deliver their very best and businesses thrive. The Female Founder Friday podcast is all about connecting with the most incredible female entrepreneurs to talk about their journey to creating their own business, the mistakes they've made along the way, and how they view their own leadership. And I'm challenging all of my guests this season to take my leadership style quiz. And during each episode, we'll be digging into their leadership style and how it impacts the way they lead in their life and their business. And if you're interested in learning more about your leadership style and want some of my top tips to help you lead more effectively, you can take the quiz right now. Just check out the show notes or head over to highvoltageleadership.ca and click on the button at the top of the page that says Take the Quiz. Then you can share your results, connect with my guests, and join the conversation on Instagram by following me at highvoltleadership. Awesome. Welcome, Afton, to the Female Founder Friday podcast. I'm really excited to have you on the show today and spend a little more time chatting with you because we've had a couple conversations and they've been fantastic. So I know this is going to be an even better conversation today.
Yes. Thank you, Lindsay, for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
Oh, I'm pumped. I'm super pumped. So I know a little bit about your journey to being a female founder, but I know there's so much more because our conversations have had to be pretty brief. So tell us, how did you get started on your entrepreneurial journey and become a female founder?
Yeah, so I'm definitely in that camp of people who is what you call an accidental entrepreneur or
Yeah.
Oh, you too? I love it.
Me too, yeah.
Yeah, and it's not something like didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial family. Parents were not business owners, didn't think I was going to be a business owner, but I really came to it, I would say, from my love of the craft of writing. That's what really drove me to this. And I'd been working in the communications and marketing field for 10 years. And I felt like at the time, I wasn't really doing enough writing. And it's just something that, even now, it's like my favorite thing to do in my business. So yeah, that was in 2019. And I had been freelancing on the side very sporadically, really throughout my entire career. So I just thought, okay, well, we'll just pick up a little bit more writing work to kind of feed that need to continue with that creative output.
Yeah.
And that actually ended up turning into my business. And so it really, in the fall of 2019, I decided, okay, well, I'll start this business. I came up with Scribe National, the name for the company. And at that point, I was still working full time. It only took about 2 months for me to become so busy that I had to make the decision to go down to part-time at my day job. And that felt like the hardest decision in the world at the time. And it's just funny when you look back on all of those things.
It is, right?
Yeah, it was, but it's like now it's just such a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And so within a couple months of that, obviously, fast forward to 2020, the pandemic had hit. And so I, along with 75% of staff at the company I worked for, were actually laid off. And so it just seemed like the right time to take the business full time.
Yeah.
So really, it was, like I said, kind of accidental, unexpected, whatever you like to call it. But I haven't looked back since then. And, it's been a great journey, and we had some early success in the company. And I really feel like it was the best thing that could have happened.
Yeah. First of all, yes to the accidental entrepreneur. I think there's definitely a group of people that they recognize they want to start their own business and they're very thoughtful and planful. And then there's the rest of us that sort of fall into it one way or another. And isn't it funny that there really is this interesting group of people that are like, never thought I'd start a business, but here I am.
Yes.
Even now I say, like, I'm not sure I have any business running my own business. Like, I'm like, what am I doing? But I do love that there's this group of people that it sort of organically develops. And what a lovely outcome from COVID, which was such a miserable period of time, that it just gave you that little extra nudge, little shove to be full-time. I think that's brilliant.
Well, yeah, thank you. And I think among that sort of accidental group, like if you're not, I don't know, trained as a business person or business minded, and you're coming to it from a place of a real love for your craft, and in my case, that's writing, you have to learn all of these other skills. And of course, as you know, in your company and the clients you help, leadership is one of those things too.
Yeah.
But it's so not only was it like this beautiful sort of unexpected turn of events in starting the business and in having a thriving business, but also just all of the other personal growth aspects of that you, at least I didn't even expect that. Like, I just thought it was, okay, well, I'm doing this full time now. It's about getting clients, doing quality work, and growing and maintaining the business. But there's actually this whole other, like, it changed me as a person completely. And I did not know that that was going to happen.
I love that you brought that up, because it is. It fundamentally changes who you are and how you show up in your whole world, not just in your business. And I think, well, you said it. I mean, the leadership piece for me is one of the most impactful parts. When you grow as a leader, you don't just grow as a leader and as an entrepreneur and as a businesswoman. You grow as a leader in every aspect of who you like. Leadership starts from the inside out. And so there is no way that it wouldn't filter in to how you show up in all the other roles that you play.
Exactly. And it's when you put it like that, it is like so obvious, but I just didn't expect it.
No, but you're not, I mean, I say this all the time. We don't start our own business to be a leader. We start our own business because we're passionate about a product or a service. You talked about your craft of writing. Absolutely. We end up being a leader because we end up having people join us in our business, whether they're a consultant, a contractor, or an employee. We still have to lead them in some fashion. And so, sort of, again, by accident, we end up growing as a leader, not because we necessarily intended to be that, but it is also one of those side effects we cannot avoid as an entrepreneur if we want to be anything other than a solopreneur.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, for me, that happened pretty quickly. So like March of 2020, I took the company full time. And then by July, August, it was very apparent that I needed help because I couldn't grow beyond, like, I was already working from, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And it's so funny how now that has transformed, because so right now we just celebrated our 3rd anniversary in business.
Yay.
And, and for the past 2 years, like, I don't even work 30 hours a week. And so that's the difference. That's solid, very talented, very trustworthy team members. And like you said, so my team are contract writers, they're entrepreneurs in their own right. Yeah. But my business would not be what it is without them in any way, shape, or form.
Yes. And I love that you bring that up, because I think that is really, really important, is that in order for you to continue to doing the writing, which you clearly are incredibly passionate about, in order for you to continue doing some of the things that you like to do, you absolutely have to find the right team. And this is something I work with business owners all the time. So not only on their own leadership, but then how to add the right people to their organization at the right time so that they can continue to do the things that they love. They can also grow as a leader, because that becomes a big part of your role. But you don't want to lose sight of the things. Like, for me, it's the coaching. I don't ever want to stop being a coach. So I need people to help me do the stuff that I'm not good at, or I don't like to do, maybe both. So that, or some of the other work that maybe I can do, but I probably shouldn't, so that I still have the capacity to coach. Like, I think that's actually really key. And it's a moment that can be tricky to figure out. Sounds like you navigated that pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, well, in the beginning, it literally was out of like sheer necessity that I get help, or else the business just wasn't going to grow beyond what it was. But then as things started to sort of smooth out a little bit, and I use that term knowing that in any entrepreneurial company, there's always ups and downs. And so it's not like it just smooths out and then it's perfect.
No.
But, you know, I was getting away from working weekends, like working early mornings, evenings, all those things. So it was smoothing out. I found in my experience that it was almost like a pendulum where I kind of believed this thought that you hear a lot in the industry that's like, you need to take yourself completely out of service delivery. And so I actually stopped doing a lot of the writing work because my team, so the team that I have, they're all writers. I actually don't have anyone helping me with like administrative work really or anything, although that's probably something that's needed soon. But I, you know, I took myself out of a lot of the writing, but then what I found was I was asking myself, like, why am I even doing this?
Right.
Because I actually don't want to be in business if I'm not writing.
No. I actually, what an important point to bring up. Yeah, for many of us that are truly passionate about our service in particular, product maybe too, and what part of that product, is it the product development, is it the design, is it the, you know, business development, whatever it is that we started the business for in the first place. Yes, it's okay if we still have our hands in some of that, because that's what fuels our passion. That's what gives us, you know, really fulfills some of our purpose on this planet. So how do you structure your business and your talent so that you can still do some of those things that actually light your fire? I actually think that that's really critical, right?
It's such an important question. And I think it probably does just take a little bit of experimentation, kind of like I did, because at first I was doing too much writing, then I wasn't doing enough. And now I do feel like I've really found that sweet spot. And you probably just have to go through it to figure out what that is. But yeah, I would say to anyone, like for the, like you just said, the thing that you're really passionate about, you know, if you've lost the joy because you've removed yourself entirely from that, like you have the ability, to just bring it back in a little bit.
So I love that. What I would add to that little shameless plug, instead of fishing around for that and experimenting and arguably wasting some time and maybe some money, you could work with a really great coach who could actually help you figure that out faster.
Yes.
Who could help you land, what is that sweet spot? Why is that writing important? And how much of that do you need to have in order to feel really joyful about what you do? How much of that needs to be leadership in your capacity? And then what are the things that you need other people to be doing for you? Do you need a great bookkeeper? Do you need a great VA? What else do you need? Do you need someone potentially that's a bit of a CFO to help you run the financial side of your business? Who are those people? What do they need to be doing for you? And how do you figure out, you know, what the fit will be? Like not just their skills and experience, but what they value and what they'll bring to the organization. I would argue that working with a great coach can help you do that and get to that better result faster. So shameless plug. Thanks for lining that one up over the plate for me. Ashton. I love that.
No, I fully agree. I mean, I've invested in coaching throughout my business, and it has, again, like my business wouldn't be what it is today without that. So I fully support that, and I'm totally on the same page.
Love it. I love it. Yeah. It can be important in those moments because you don't have to figure it out by yourself. I think that's another part of the entrepreneurial journey that you learn. It's okay to ask for help. It doesn't mean you're not a good entrepreneur. It doesn't mean that you lack something to ask for expertise in your business.
Oh, absolutely. And just your point about the bookkeeper, like that was one of the first things where areas where I got help. And it's just like so nice to be able to rely on people for things that are not necessarily your strong suit.
100%.
And like to build on what you said, I would even say like not only asking for help, but sometimes, because especially entrepreneurs that work from home, which I do, and I know a lot of us do, it's like not only asking for help, but sometimes you actually actively have to make that effort to put yourself in communities. Otherwise you'll be isolated.
Yes.
Like you won't have anyone to talk to.
Well, our own brain becomes an echo chamber, right? Like we actually need, especially those of us that work in connected creative spaces, which I would argue is probably most of us. We actually we need connection. We need to collaborate. We need to partner. We need to hear divergent thoughts. We need people to say things that we don't know, haven't thought of, or want to argue with, because that's actually a great part of the creative process, right? Like we need great community. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Just because you're a solopreneur doesn't mean you have to do it yourself.
Exactly.
That's the bottom line here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so key.
I love it. So this is such a great discussion. One of the things that Afton's already done is taken my leadership style quiz, and we're going to talk about her leadership style after, because she's got a thriving, growing business, and that's really key. If you want to know what your leadership style is, you can click on the link in the show notes or go to the website. It's highvoltageleadership.ca. There's a little orange button at the top of the page that says take the quiz, and you can do it right now. It only takes a few minutes. It's fun. It's informational. You're going to learn something about yourself and your own leadership. And I'm going to give you 3 of my best leadership tips for your style to help you be a more impactful leader right now today. And then you can compare and talk with us on Instagram about what your leadership style is. So I'm curious, Afton, what did you get from that little quiz? What's your style?
Yeah, so my style is supportive.
Awesome.
And
what does that mean to you?
Well, so this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with maybe not necessarily coming into your entrepreneurial role with skills that you feel really solid in beyond your craft or your service or your product. And that definitely is something that resonates with me, because leadership, and I think particularly in my case, because I work with a team of contractors who, like I said, are entrepreneurs in their own right. And so I honestly don't feel like it's talked about a lot. It's like, how do you lead in that situation? How do you, and especially for someone like me where the style is supportive. And so, without giving everything away, because I want people to take the quiz, I just want to mention with one of the other styles, directive. It's like, that is not me. I actually have quite a hard time even being assertive. And so even though I know it's for the good of the business, and I know that the more clear, the more direct, all of those things, the better. But it's just something that, especially in the beginning, was quite uncomfortable for me. And so, like, I want to be supportive. I want to be really nice. I want to be really collaborative. I want to make sure I'm not upsetting or offending or, overstepping or all of those things. And I think, especially when you're in a situation where the folks in your business who are helping you create results and create outcomes are not technically employees, it is something that you have to just wrap your head around and understand just how to make it all work, I guess. And so it's been like, I didn't walk into my business ever having really led, more than just a handful of people at previous roles, right? Like it wasn't like I was leading big teams before. And so it's been something that I've had to work to develop for sure.
I love that. And thank you for stating that sort of, really openly, because you're right. I think that it is an interesting situation to be in. I would assert that the same leadership principles apply. The same styles are appropriate. It's just a matter of how you execute on that. When you have an employee in your business, you have a greater responsibility. Absolutely. And arguably a greater connection. You're building culture together. There's more depth to that leadership relationship. But when you're leading people that are subcontractors or consultants, there is still an element of leadership there. And I think you're right. It can be very difficult to navigate that relationship. As you were talking, the thing that really popped into my head that's the most important is it's got to be mutually respectful. They need to respect what you are trying to do. They need to understand your vision, right? They still need some of that information we would give to an employee so that they can produce great work. They need to understand the background and the history with the, especially when you're creating copy and content like your team would be, geez, they need to know what your client is up to. They need to understand that. That's got to be key, I would think. And for any of us, right? Yeah. I work with contractors as well. They need to understand what my client is trying to accomplish. But there's a different respect there because they are business owners. And I love that you sort of talked about that more than once, but they still need to know what you want and how you want it, what that timeline is. There's moments where we have to be a little bit directive for sure.
Yes.
That can be challenging, right? It can be very challenging to have that directive conversation. I think many of us, like you said, we don't want to hurt people's feelings, but we have to get our point across. It can be a fine line.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe I've found in my case, it's like some of the things that I've been uncomfortable with, it wouldn't even hurt someone's feelings. Like sometimes I think we're overly nice.
Yes.
Yeah. But everything you've said is completely on point. And in my case, like anyone who has come onto my business, starting in that time period of summer 2020, when I realized like, I need help, is actually still with my business. And so in a lot of ways, even though certainly they are business owners and everything like that, it really does feel like a team. And, these are people that I'm collaborating with almost on a daily basis and have been for years.
And that speaks volume, right? That statistic that you still have people working for you 3 years later through arguably one of the most volatile labor markets we've experienced in recent decades. That speaks volumes about the team and culture that you've created, even though these people are individual contractors and consultants. They feel that love. I would to use a big word. They feel the love, right? And that is actually really important because they're producing great work for you. The trust just grows. Like that's amazing.
And I think when we were discussing like the whole need to sort of not just be in isolation behind your desk in your house, like as an entrepreneur, to tie it back, I think that the reason why I even knew how to model leadership like that or create a team like that was because I actually saw that from one of my own clients who I was working as a writer in a very similar contract situation. And she just always, and her business model is very similar. She's been operating for years, even longer than I have, with an even bigger team of contractors than I have, has chosen to do it that way instead of hiring in-house employees. And I just always felt that she was such an excellent example of how to make someone really feel like they're part of a team, even if it's in a non-traditional structure. And I think in that way, like just exposing ourselves to other entrepreneurs, the way they run their business, the way like people are doing things. Like I'm sure I would have intuitively gone that way anyway, because obviously with that supportive leadership style, like it just is my personality. But I think seeing it done and seeing it done so well and knowing the effect that it had on me, and it's always like, I'm going to prioritize her work. We still work together now, almost 4 years later. And it matters, right?
Yeah, it really does. Because when you create that feeling of belonging, when people feel like they are heard and seen, that their work is valued, that they're respected, all of that creates that space, that culture of belonging. It doesn't matter how they engage with their business, with your business. They'll stay and be happy. And our people are the value, right? They create all the value in the business. It's the talented people that we have that create that value for us. And when they are happy, they make our clients happy. And when our clients are happy, they bring us more work and more money, and they bring us more clients.
Yeah.
And when we have those things, our revenue goes up and our business really thrives. So the equation in my mind is quite simple. The execution of that can be slightly more challenging. Don't get me wrong. But when you look at the math on its face, it's very simple. And when we have happy people, we have thriving businesses. That is ultimately the end result. And then we can do the pieces in our business that we really love to do and we can have fulfilling careers too, right? Because ultimately that's what we started these dang businesses for. So I
yeah.
love this. I love it. And I love that you found sort of a vision, a mentor that helped you create that. That can be really key.
Yeah, yeah, it's really, I mean, I can't imagine how different it would be, if I, and not, and to anyone who chooses this situation, it's fine, but I'll just say, like, if I had kind of new contractors coming in and out every month, like, personally, I would find
Yeah.
that quite stressful and much
Yeah.
more time consuming. So I think,
Yes.
yeah, I agree with you. Like, the
Yeah.
business doesn't exist without the team.
No, no. And I think that, that turnover in any business, no matter how you engage with your talent, that turnover is incredibly costly.
Oh,
Time, money, energy, stress, all of it.
yeah.
That is a killer, especially in a small business that has a small team. The
Yeah.
more turnover you have, the more unsettled your organization and the rest of your team is, you're just not going to operate at the highest level of performance. It's absolutely true. I'm glad you pointed that out.
Mhm.
I want to know, I mean, it sounds like you've had a lovely run. You did talk about ups and downs. So I
Oh,
want
yeah.
to know a little bit about the downs. Where have you screwed it up, made mistakes, messed it up, whatever you want to call it? And what have you learned from those things?
Oh, okay. Well, many areas, but I'll focus on one that I had been thinking about that, it again goes back to what we were saying earlier, that oftentimes when you get into business, it's to do, the thing that you love to do.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
to switch gears a little bit, because although I'm sure I've made many mistakes on the leadership side, I think I've done decently
Yeah.
okay there.
Yeah.
But one particular moment, and I think this is true for a lot of people, sales, it's not something that comes naturally to many of us. I mean,
Yeah.
some people it does, and that's fantastic. But I absolutely bombed a sales call this one time. And I do a lot of sales calls in my business because, just, to get on a soapbox for a second, it is a number one revenue producing activity. You need to be doing that as an entrepreneur. You need to be thinking about how to bring money into your business, and not just sort of like playing around on Instagram all day, as sometimes is
Yeah.
very tempting for us to do. So anyway, I was just doing my thing. I had done probably 100 sales calls before this over the past year. And just this one particular call, I absolutely bombed it. And so I think, I was really caught off guard because, probably, again, this is something a lot of us have had happen. The person, we were talking about the services, and they said, "Why is it so expensive?" Or like, "Wow, that's so expensive," or something like that. And I was really caught off guard.
Mm.
And then they kind of insinuated, or just maybe suggested that, "Well, how do I know that you're not going to just sort of grab copy off of somebody else's website and use?" And it was an odd conversation. It was just
Yeah.
going in a direction that I wasn't prepared for. But I really froze. Like, I completely froze. I did not, I was so, it really hit me in my integrity, and I was just so offended by it. But
Yeah.
it's like, you've got to move past that, and you have to react in the moment, and you have to have this conversation with this prospect. And, like, it was a real crash and burn moment, and I really needed to, well, at first I needed to talk to another entrepreneur who was a
Yeah.
friend of mine, because it's like,
Yeah.
you can't just go through everything alone. So it's
Yeah.
like, after the call was over, I needed to, talk to a couple
Oh,
people
yeah.
about it, and just sit with it, and just think, like, well, number one, so I have a friend who's a coach, and so she was like, "I think this upset you, why do you think
Yeah.
this upset you so much?" It's because of that integrity piece, right?
Yeah.
And so, of course, asking those great questions as a coach to, like, get to the bottom of what the
Yeah.
problem is. And then, just it's like, sometimes, as much as you want to be prepared, you have to have something really shitty happen, before, like, okay, this is how I would react if this
Yes.
were to happen again, right?
Yes.
And I think, like, nobody likes to bomb a sales call. Nobody likes to literally have their, like, I couldn't speak. I couldn't respond. I couldn't, my
I
words, like, it felt like almost like a panic attack.
I love that you, first of all, let me thank you for very courageously and vulnerably talking about something
that was clearly very difficult for you. I really appreciate you bringing that to the show.
Thank you.
Because yes, we have all had that sales call where we have just completely blown it. And we don't like to talk about it because it's embarrassing. And we feel like somehow we might not be a good enough entrepreneur because we blew it. We have all done it. Second of all, I love that you tag that right back to your values, because that is something that is so important in the work that I do, is helping entrepreneurs understand what are their values as a person. How do those reflect in their business and why they're important? And yes, I can experience that because I have a big value of integrity too. And that prospective client would have just stepped right on top. Like it would have almost taken your breath away.
Oh, it did.
Have them do that.
Yeah.
Like, wow. That's a moment. But I guess what I would say is, first of all, beautiful lessons from it, but also not the right client. Like, time out.
Such a good point. Yeah, such a good point. Not only like the lesson of, okay, if I'm in this situation in the future, how do I react? But yeah, you're absolutely right that not every client is going to be the right client for you. And that's so true. So yeah, thank you for also bringing that up, because at the time that was definitely something that I had realized too. I was like, well, this obviously wouldn't be an aligned relationship.
No, 100%. And we, as much as we have big hearts and we want to serve everybody and we want to make money, and sometimes, it's hard to walk away from a client, but we know it's not a fit. And we know it's business that we should not be doing. We're not going to perform our best. We're going to be resentful and angry the whole time. And actually that's going to cost us a lot. Like, it's not worth the money.
So true. Yeah.
So true. Okay. So I'm curious, what did you learn? What are you doing differently now in your sales calls? I'd love to hear that.
Well, I think just being better prepared for objections, and, it is hard when you obviously pour yourself into your work, but I think there is that element of, even if you at the end of the day take it personally, I think in the moment you have to really set that aside and just kind of like, it's a pragmatic conversation where you're answering questions. And, now it's like, if someone says that something is too expensive, and our services, I would say, are like mid to higher end. So it's not even like we're outrageously expensive, but it's like, that's okay, and that's okay that, I mean, it's luckily I have never had anyone insinuate like, would we just grab content off the internet? That was a really odd comment, and luckily that has not come up again. But, like, for any reason, if someone thinks that something is too expensive or it's not for them, it's just not a fit, right? Yeah. And just detaching emotion in that way and just thinking like, okay, that's totally fine. There's someone out there for them, and there's someone out there for me. And not everything, it just goes back to what you said, right? Not everything has to be a fit.
No, it doesn't. And, sort of the old saying that it's not personal, it's just business. I think it's hard for us because these businesses, we're very attached to. I mean, they're like a baby, right? Like, we gave birth to this damn thing, which that's a whole nother show. If that's what you feel about your business, we need to talk about that. Call me. But we're very attached. We're deeply embedded. The vision and the mission comes from us. And so when someone does challenge a big value like integrity, it's hard not to take it personally. But in the end, it is just business. And we do have to find that way to detach from those comments or that feed, maybe it's a Google review. Like, we really do have to find the perspective so that we can see, is there a message in there? Is there a do differently? Is there something I can learn? So I love that. Like, how do I prepare better for those objections? How do I get inside the head of my client and what they're going to say? And how do I defend my value? Right? Yeah. Yes, my services are more expensive than some, not as expensive as others. And here's why. Here's the value that I bring to this conversation. Exactly. If you don't see the value, that is super cool. There's someone else out there for you to work with. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it just comes with time, right? Like, it just, now that I've had that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and you can't know sometimes how you'd handle it until it's happening.
No, you're never going to anticipate every curveball.
No.
And you're right. You just get better at dealing with the curveballs over the course of your development as an entrepreneur. And for those of us that fell into it by accident, we maybe have a bit more of a steeper learning curve, maybe a longer learning curve.
Well, and I think that, you know, the curveballs just keep on coming. Like, that's the thing too, is like, that was why I said, you know, that's one example. And that is a more, you know, prominent example in my mind. But I think the thing to know is like, enjoy the times. I mean, luckily, like I do get a ton of joy out of my business. I honestly can't even believe that I get to do what I do every day.
Love it.
But that being said, it's like, you know, every couple of months, like something will happen, and you just have to know that things are, I mean, it sounds obvious, but it's like things are not going to be smooth or perfect all the time. And so you just overcome one curveball, and then another one comes that's totally different, and you learn something totally different, and it just goes on and on.
100%. I have a friend that says, as an entrepreneur, every day is a school day. Like, you are constantly learning. You are constantly in school. And it is sometimes the school of hard knocks. But as an entrepreneur, you are on a constant learning journey. And whether it's about your own leadership growth, about, you know, business acumen, about, you know, sales and conversation, like all of this is a constant learning journey for us and as entrepreneurs. And I think you said it a couple of times today, know that you're not alone. Like, there's community there for you. There's people there to support you. There's people there to challenge you, ask you those great questions. And so I love sort of landing the episode today on that note is, you know, the journey. It's okay to be on that journey. It's okay to keep going.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's okay. And it's, you know, even in those tough times, like, you're still learning something. And I hope for everyone that, you know, we're all having fun, right? Because that is.
Thank you. Yes. Have fun. Have fun at work. Your work should be fun. Your business should give you joy and deep pleasure and fulfillment. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for bringing all of that and all of yourself to today's conversation. I am so grateful to have had you as a guest. This has just been, it's been a wonderful, wonderful chat today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in today. I sure hope you enjoyed listening as much as I did hosting this conversation. And if you did enjoy today's episode, would you do me a favor? Would you give the episode a 5-star review and share it with all of your friends? I would really appreciate that. I've got a goal to impact 1,000 female founders, and with your help, we can really amplify this message. Thanks again for being a part of the show, and don't forget to connect with me and all of my guests on Instagram at High Volt Leadership. We'll see you next Friday.